The seizure of power by Amin was, in essence, a coup. The international community, notably the US, UK, and Israel, condemned his actions over time, despite being his allies in the early years. Power had transformed him into a ruthless, bloodthirsty tyrant, consumed by megalomania and paranoia. We all recognize IDI Amin from a familiar Turkish film. In a scene from Hababam Sinifi, Damat Ferit, holding a large flag, leads the entire class towards the school's exit. "Open the door, Vaisal Effendi," he declares. "We're going to welcome the president of Uganda." This line became a well-known catchphrase over the years. In 1975, when the film was released, IDI Amin was indeed the president of Uganda, and this scene alluded to him. Have you ever pondered how IDI Amin Dada became one of Africa's most feared dictators? His journey to becoming Uganda's third president was filled with ambition, cruelty, and intrigue. Let's delve deeper into the life and rise of Africa's most bloodthirsty tyrant. Amin's story began in 1925 in a small town called Kaboko in northwestern Uganda. His humble beginnings were shaped by a soldier father and a mother from the Lugbara tribe with local or aristocratic ties. This blend of military influence and tribal aristocracy laid the foundation for Amin's captivating life. Growing up in a family steeped in superstition, Amin was far removed from the corridors of power in his early years. His education was limited, and like many, he sought his future in the military. This decision, though unremarkable at first, ultimately paved the way for his ascent to power. Amin's military career started at the age of 20, when he joined the King's African Rifles, the British colonial army. Initially enlisted as a cook, this was a modest beginning for someone who would later become a powerful leader. His physical presence immediately set him apart. Standing at 6'5" with an imposing build, Amin seemed born to be a soldier. His first true test as a soldier came a year later when he was deployed to Gilgil, Kenya. Here, he served in the 21st Infantry Brigade of the Kar and participated in the Shifta War against Somali rebels. His performance in operations led to rapid promotions. Within 5 years of enlistment, he became a sergeant. The turning point in Amin's military career came with his return to Uganda in 1954. Here, he was entrusted with commanding the parade for Queen Elizabeth II's visit, gaining recognition from his military superiors and the country's leadership. Following Uganda's independence in 1962, Amin played a crucial role in suppressing internal conflicts and rebellions. He often employed effective but brutal methods. His ability to crush dissent with ruthless efficiency caught the attention of Uganda's political leaders, particularly Prime Minister Milton Obote. The relationship between Amin and Obote initially blossomed into an alliance. Amin played a critical role through his support for Obote, leading to rapid promotions and his appointment as lieutenant. He eventually rose to the position of deputy commander of the Ugandan army. Amin's rise to power was marked by controversial and violent events. For instance, the 1962 operation against the Turana nomads raised concerns. However, Amin's connections with British officers shielded him from accusations. This period marked the beginning of his notoriety for violence and ruthlessness. By the late 1960s, as Amin's ambitions grew, his loyalty to Obote waned. He had become an influential figure in the military after Uganda's independence and began showing signs of his dictatorial tendencies. Amin's journey to becoming Uganda's most infamous leader culminated in the 1971 coup. This marked his transition from a military leader to the head of state. In the early 1970s, Uganda was politically tense. Obote was losing popularity and facing accusations of corruption. This led Amin to recognize his political differences with Obote and a growing distrust. The seeds of the coup were sown when Obote, uneasy about Amin's increasing influence and popularity within the army, planned to arrest him. Amin learned of this plan and acted swiftly. On January 25, 1971, at the age of 46, while Obote was attending a conference in Singapore, Amin executed the coup. The coup unfolded unexpectedly without bloodshed. Amin utilized his military might, sending tanks into Kampala and seizing the radio station. He declared himself president, head of the armed forces, and chairman of the Defense Council. Public reaction to the coup was mixed. Some saw Amin as a savior due to their disillusionment with Obote's rule. However, these initial hopes quickly faded. International response was no different. Initially, some countries might have viewed Amin as a bulwark against communism in the region, but they soon realized the true nature of his regime. Amin reneged on his promise to hold free and fair elections shortly after the coup. Instead, he consolidated his power by dismantling democratic structures and replacing them with a military dictatorship. Amin's decision to purge Obote supporters from the army not only eliminated potential threats, but also allowed him to fill military ranks with his loyalists. These moves ushered in a new era under his rule, one characterized by paranoia, brutality, and an iron grip on power. Under Amin, the state apparatus underwent a radical transformation. He established security organizations loyal to him, including the Public Safety Unit and the State Research Bureau, notorious for human rights abuses. These organizations were used to silence dissent and eliminate opponents. They gained notoriety for arbitrary arrests, torture, and extrajudicial killings, all in the name of eradicating opposition. Beneath Amin's erratic leadership, the economy he promised to revitalize suffered greatly. In 1972, his decision to expel Asians from Uganda, who were a cornerstone of the country's economic structure, led to a severe decline in both the economy and international standing. While this move aimed to appease the majority black Ugandan population and solidify economic independence, it plunged the country into economic chaos. Amin's rule also witnessed a shift in foreign policy. Initially maintaining close ties with the West, Amin sought support from Libya and the Soviet Union as relations deteriorated. His anti-Israel stance and alliance with Libya's Muammar Gaddafi signaled a significant transformation in Uganda's international relations. Amin's regime was authoritarian and brutal, creating a state governed by fear and intimidation to consolidate power. His army, once a national institution, transformed into an instrument of oppression loyal solely to Amin. During this period, an estimated 300,000 Ugandan citizens lost their lives due to state-sponsored violence, making Amin one of the bloodiest dictators in African history. Amin's economic policies proved disastrous. The expulsion of the Asian community, which held a significant place in the country's trade and industry, caused a severe downturn. The economy spiraled into chaos as businesses were nationalized without planning or expertise. Once prosperous, Uganda faced soaring inflation, currency devaluation, and a sharp decline in export revenues. The economic collapse was further exacerbated by Amin's excessive military spending and rampant corruption. Amin's rule was also marked by a bizarre cult of personality. He bestowed upon himself titles such as Conqueror of the British Empire, Lord of all the beasts of the earth and fishes of the sea, and King of Scotland. His eccentric behavior and grandiose claims, though often nonsensical, were backed by the might of an oppressive military regime, making them all the more chilling. Amin utilized state media to propagate his image, portraying himself as a charismatic, omnipotent leader. As Amin's atrocities gained international notoriety, former allies distanced themselves amidst reports of massacres and economic collapse. The breaking point came in 1976 with a botched hostage rescue operation at Entebbe Airport. Israeli commandos freed hostages held by Palestinian hijackers, allegedly collaborating with Amin. This incident severely tarnished Amin's international reputation. To maintain his grip on power, Amin frequently reshuffled his cabinet and military leadership, ensuring no one amassed enough power to challenge him. Relying heavily on the military, Amin often addressed the nation in military uniform to project strength. His rule was characterized by constant purges and replacements, creating an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty even among his closest allies. As Amin's human rights abuses became widely known internationally, the world turned against him. Countries and international organizations condemned the suppression of political opponents and ethnic minorities. The assassination of Ugandan Archbishop Janani Luwum in 1977 heightened these condemnations, leading some countries to sever diplomatic ties. Uganda's economy under Amin faced rampant inflation. The government's excessive printing of money led to the devaluation of the shilling and rising prices for essential goods and services. This resulted in a significant decline in the living standards of Ugandan citizens. The agricultural sector suffered under Amin's rule, undermining the country's economic backbone. The expulsion of skilled farmers and the government's neglect of agricultural development led to decreased production. Policies on food exports further worsened food shortages within the country. A substantial portion of the national budget was allocated to military spending. Amin's insistence on building a powerful military force diverted resources away from essential services and economic development. This military-first approach led to the neglect of vital sectors of the economy, draining the national treasury. Corruption was widespread in Amin's government. Embezzlement of state funds, misallocation of resources, and a lack of transparency further weakened the economy and discouraged investment, solidifying the economic crisis. The economic decline had a profound impact on society. Poverty, inflation, and unemployment soared, fueling discontent among the population and sparking various forms of resistance. Amin's aggressive foreign policy drained economic resources and led to trade losses. The collapse of Amin's regime was a dramatic and complex reflection of his era. Towards the end of his rule, terror, economic collapse, mismanagement, and international isolation set the stage for his overthrow and exile. Amin's decision to invade Tanzania in October 1978 marked the beginning of his downfall. Tanzania's response was swift and decisive, launching a counteroffensive against Amin. Amin's army was ill-prepared to face Tanzanian forces, and morale plummeted as desertions increased. By April 1979, Tanzania had captured the capital, Kampala. Amin's regime effectively ended with Tanzania's advance, and Amin fled the country. He initially sought refuge in Libya, where, as an ally of Muammar Gaddafi, Amin spent a brief period. He later moved to Saudi Arabia in search of a more permanent sanctuary and was granted asylum. The Saudi government allowed him to reside in the country on the condition that he abstain from political activities, considering Amin's conversion to Islam. Amin spent the rest of his life in Jeddah, living a secluded, comfortable yet quiet life in exile. Reports indicate that his lifestyle during this period was a stark contrast to his flamboyant and tyrannical days in power. Saudi authorities kept Amin under close surveillance to ensure he refrained from any political involvement. Amin's downfall did not immediately heal Uganda's wounds. His rule had left the country in economic, social, and political ruin. The task of rebuilding the nation required years of effort from subsequent governments. IDI Amin's death on August 16, 2003, at the age of 78 in Jeddah, evoked mixed reactions in Uganda and worldwide. For some, it marked the end of a dark chapter in Uganda's history. Others lamented that he died without facing justice for his crimes. Amin's era left an indelible mark on Ugandan society and culture. Beyond his political and economic policies, the country faced profound and lasting effects on its social fabric, cultural expressions, and collective psychology. The fear and insecurity instilled during Amin's reign impacted social dynamics and community cohesion for years. The brain drain resulted in a significant void in the country's intellectual and professional landscape. This loss was felt across various sectors, from education and healthcare to industry and technology. The impact on cultural expression was complex. On one hand, the regime restricted cultural expression by targeting artists and suppressing artistic freedom. On the other hand, it led to the emergence of resistance art and literature to process and critique the traumatic experiences of this period. The education sector suffered greatly under Amin. Schools and universities were closed or deteriorated due to a lack of resources and qualified teachers. This had a ripple effect on the development of Ugandan youth, affecting their educational attainment and future job prospects. Religion played a complex role in Amin's Uganda. His conversion to Islam and favoritism towards Muslims led to shifts in religious dynamics and practices. The regime's interference in religious institutions, coupled with the general atmosphere of fear and repression, influenced how religious communities functioned and interacted. The psychological trauma inflicted on survivors of Amin's brutality left deep scars. Many Ugandans experienced loss, fear, and trauma, affecting mental health and societal dynamics. The legacy of this trauma continues to shape the national psyche and attitudes towards governance. Even as years pass, healing some wounds takes time. What are your thoughts on all that transpired? Don't forget to share your insights with us. Until next time,